Welcome to Smalls Talks Balls, presented by Champions Round. And now your host, Steph Smalls.
What is up, everyone? Smalls Talks Balls is back. I am Steffi Smalls, and we are continuing my 32-team preview. We are off the NFC North, so we are headed to the AFC North, and we're going to start with the Browns. And to help me break down the Browns is Locked On Podcast host Jeff Lloyd. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm good, Steph. Looking forward to this. I think once you get to this, time of the year, knowing we're about to start closing out OTAs with teams, the weather's getting nicer for all of us that are in this content business, a chance to maybe, relax a little bit, over the next month or so before things start to really amp up again in July. And it's always weird when you're in this type of content business and hey, we're doing something August so-and-so, or what day of the week is that in August?
I know.
But I mean, we all love what we do. We're all blessed with the opportunities we have to do what we do. Wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, and it's always weird where you're like, well, hey, what are you doing Monday at 11 a.m.? I'm free at Monday at 11 a.m. Are you free then?
Yeah, but, I know. Someone will mention a date. It happens every time. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to need more than just the date because I don't know what you're talking about. Even before when I was jumping on here, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll say happy. And I'm like, I literally don't even know what day of the week it is at this point. They all blend together. But we do know that the draft is finished. The Browns have had a very eventful offseason, I would say, one of the more eventful ones for more ways than one. But we'll start with the draft. Why don't you just give me your overall reaction to this Cleveland Browns draft?
Well, the thing that was weird, and I've been with Locked On. I've been the host of Locked On Browns since September of 2017. So that means that team at that point was basically built on Myles Garrett and nothing else. So obviously the infancy of the show was a lot about, building the roster, building the organization for any hopes of finding some real success from when they returned in 1999. So that was all our coverage. But it was weird this year. And even when they moved all the first round draft picks that they moved for Deshaun Watson, it was like, all right, first pick in the draft, 44. There's good players. Then they dropped out of 44. And obviously a lot of Browns fans were like, whoa, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And then when and if you were of the belief that they were going to re-sign Jadeveon Clowney, it was like, okay, well, you need to understand the Cleveland Browns are not looking to draft starters. And it was so weird to say that. They have their offensive line intact, had wide receivers after the Amari Cooper move. Their running back room is deep, had their quarterback. Tight end David Njoku was franchise tagged. Clowney came back. You had your starting defensive ends. You had your linebackers. You had your corners. You had your secondary. So a lot of this was, players that they liked that felt maybe needed some time, players that can be role players for them. Just a weird, refreshing change of pace for a Browns team that's really gone kind of heavy on analytics. They've gone heavy on analytics with the thought process of if we bring in good coaches to play these players up, it's going to happen. And to this point, it has. You've seen players like Donovan Peoples-Jones, a 6th-round pick, become a player for them. Demetric Felton, another 6th-round pick, become a player for them. It's a whole evolution and in different times here covering the Browns, and it's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I think that it's probably as a fan, you're like, what are you doing? We need to, but in a position like this where they have a very well-rounded roster, I feel like I said that. I don't even know how many times I said that last offseason before going into it. It's like if 1, 2, 3 things click, the Browns are going to be the team to beat. And they're very close to being one of those superpowers in the AFC. There's a couple questions, and obviously QB is part of it. But I want to talk about the wide receiver room. They went and they got themselves Amari Cooper. They lost Jarvis Landry, who I'm giving away a signed jersey. We'll part ways with the Browns Landry jersey later on. But they drafted 2 wide receivers, if I'm not mistaken, one in the 3rd, one in the 6th. And the one in the 3rd was David Bell. I think they needed another pass catcher again. You're adding more depth to a roster that's already pretty plump. And that's a good thing. He didn't have a great combine, but he also had a very, very, very productive college career. Where do you think he fits? And is the expectation that he's immediately this complement to Amari? And because you still have Joe, talk to me about the wide receiver room.
And this was one of the biggest things of this offseason. And, it was even going in through the season. It was so much of the, fans were, oh, well, it's the quarterback, or where it's Odell, or well, it's Jarvis. And, obviously Austin Hooper fell into some of those conversations too, where the Cleveland Browns made the ultimate decision was it's all of you. Everybody get out. I mean, whatever, anybody want, every stance you wanted to take, nobody won. Everybody that anybody wanted to stick up for, they're all gone. So you bring in a player like Amari Cooper, and the first thing is Amari Cooper, you go to his Twitter page. It's like dormant for like 6 years. Yes, thank God. A guy who does not want to go on social media. It's probably what this team needs first and foremost more than anything. His play speaks for itself. Kind of a quiet assassin on the field. You're never going to confuse him with one of the top 7 or 8 guys. But on any given week, he can play like one of the top 7 or 8 wide receivers. The tiny bit of concern, obviously, went from Oakland, obviously to Dallas. Most of the time, he played in better weather than most of what he's going to see here in Cleveland. There is some noticeable number in production dropping off, but that's not necessarily something I'm too concerned about because there's a lot more working for this Browns offense. Donovan Peoples-Jones, the growth path from a 6th-round rookie who wasn't supposed to play much but ended up playing, ended up 14, 15 receptions, some contributions. Last year, he was the talk of August at the wide receiver position. He had a really, really strong camp. A couple of drops early, then Odell came back, then there was all the dealings with everything there. But as the season went on, the path led to Donovan Peoples-Jones being the number one. Well, I mean, we'll go quote unquote the number 1 wide receiver for the Browns last year. But if you think about it, he's a former 6th-round pick. You love the growth path that he's on. He's a great athlete. He's got good size. He's physically built, more of a vertical guy than he's going to be, a guy who's going to take a 5-yard slant and go 27, 35 yards with anything like that. The pick of Bell. Now, there were a lot of names that the Browns moved away from that they could have taken at pick 44. George Pickens was a guy that a lot of people loved. I love too. But David Bell did more in his final season at Purdue than George Pickens did in his entire career at Georgia. So, I mean, that's something to not sneeze at. He's played in this type of an environment. He's played in this type of weather. I think he's going to play more of a power slot. His selection was basically the end of Jarvis Landry's time here. We were talking actually today on the show when we were like, after Amari Cooper, between the other wide receivers on the roster, who is what? I think David Bell will have the most receptions. I think maybe Donovan Peoples-Jones will have the most yards. Then there's second-year guy Anthony Schwartz. He may have the highest average per catch. 4.29 speaks for itself. Browns are going to use him in a lot of gadget ways they used Jarvis Landry in the past, but now they have a guy who can truly make explosive plays. Anthony Schwartz's best day in the NFL was week 1 of his rookie year and not much else afterwards. So he's still a player. And the Browns, this is one thing, the Browns don't give up on players. They will give Anthony Schwartz an opportunity again this year to find his way. Michael Woods is interesting. He's a good run blocker. I think his tape when he was at Arkansas was better. It's weird when you transfer at the time that he did and basically transfer up. So going from an Arkansas, where most likely he would have been the top receiver, to go to Oklahoma, where we got 4 and 5 stars who are 2 years younger than you. It's going to be a little bit tough to give you maybe the reps that you think you're going to get coming here. And of course, Oklahoma itself kind of fell off the map a little bit this year. The quarterback fell off. Obviously, the coach had eyes towards, something else. And so it worked out that way. He's going to be a guy that's going to have to find it. He's going to be a guy who has to earn it. Jakeem Grant is still is here as a return man, but there's always that one game of year where Jakeem Grant looks like one of the better NFL players at the wide receiver position. Everybody says, well, why don't they do that more? The reason they don't do it more is because it's kind of something you just pull out every now and then. You still have Demetric Felton. Is he part of that wide receiver room? My guess is probably going to be not. He's in an odd spot where he could be considered the 5th running back or the 7th wide receiver. Either way, none of those numbers technically work as far as roster security. It's a nice room. It's young. But for me, and the thing I'm saying, everybody was, nervous about it is, look, if you pay Deshaun Watson $238 million, he's supposed to cover up for some warts. He's supposed to make players better. And everybody last year, so-and-so didn't succeed because Baker Mayfield couldn't get it done, I don't want to hear it this year. If this is, you put this investment into Deshaun Watson, he is supposed to have all these players playing at the levels that is expected of them. So there's a lot of that. There's youngness, there's newness, certainly. But if you think that he is this elite guy, you expect, and this is never going to be a team that's going to throw for 4,000 yards. They throw for 4,000 yards. They're going to be a 7-9 ball club. 7 and 10 ball club, I should say. But, this is what you expect for him. You expect him to elevate the play of the players around him.
Right. And that's part of being that elite quarterback. And I think that gets missed in translation a lot. The reason why you're paying these guys is to elevate every single person around them, because just at the end of the day, that's literally what you need from a guy like that. You see guys like Aaron Rodgers do similar things. Tom Brady, who took pay cuts, but he did, again, similar stuff like that. But we'll stay on the quarterback situation. Won't get too into it. What's up with Baker Mayfield? Moving on from him, Jacoby Brissett. What happens?
There's no way this works. I mean, and I've tried to equate this to relationships. When you tell somebody you're seeing that maybe it's time to see other people, it's always kin for I already am. And I've basically moved on. So now this is me letting you know that basically, I'm planning on moving on because I already have. There's no way this works. Because even still, Watson sits the first 4, 6, 8 games. Okay. The Browns have a very favorable schedule to start the season. First 4 games are winnable with bad Baker Mayfield last year. So what do? He plays 6 games. The Browns go 5-1. What do you do now? Your future is tied to Deshaun Watson. You have everything in the world invested in him. The Browns, look, the point is they know they're eating money. There's no way around it. Everybody knows they're eating money. The question is, for the Browns, we want to make it as palatable as possible. So can we drag this out longer? Look, Baker's not going to be at OTAs. He is not going to be at training camp. We don't even know if he was be ready to do anything if he was at OTAs, obviously coming back from the surgery. When you make that significant, it was a break. And look, you tell him, look, we're going to go after one of these guys because we think they're an upgrade after you. And if you're Baker Mayfield, you don't essentially have a leg to stand on. But what? I mean, look, at this point, just get me out of here. Find somebody. But the Browns don't have to grant anybody any favors. It's not even, I don't even think it's about draft pick compensation. I think it's just about, what we think we can possibly get for him. And everybody knows the way negotiations work. Oh, well, we only want to pay 4, which means we'll pay 6. We only want to pay 5, which means maybe we pay $7.5 million of the 19. And, with the fact that he can't participate now, I think for teams like Carolina, for Seattle, it's a tough pill to swallow because we have other guys we want to see, but basically we're telling these guys, we've made this investment. It's not going to matter what you do here in OTAs. So why necessarily do it now? It's probably something, and it'll be a Friday in June, 4:58. It'll come by and everybody will run away for the weekend. We'll all digest it and start talking about it on Monday. It's just a question of, the Browns feeling that there is a number they know teams will commit to, and they're not just gonna back off it, and they're certainly not going to eat all 19 million.
Right. So you think there's no way that he's going to be on the Browns next year then, huh?
There's no way. And the thing is there's guys in this locker room and this offensive line, they truly stuck up for him. They understood. And usually it's the offensive line who understand how much, look, you're a skill player, you're banged up. Most of the time they can't have you out there because you're not able to do much. It was the offensive lineman that Baker was close with. They knew how dinged up he was. But even them, look, you all went to the Bahamas with the new quarterback. It's basically, this sucks. We're friends. But we all see the writing on the wall. This relationship is moving on.
And at the end of the day, it's a business. And obviously, it is what it is. It's not about people's feelings, which obviously Baker is a little bit more of an emotional one with his little
to his own fault. To his own fault. There's no way around it. Nobody.
I mean, at the end of the day, too, it's like if I'm the Browns, I'm also going to be as petty as possible now because you kind of ticked me off. Like we were already not in limbo and things weren't great. And then it's like, again, seeing your boyfriend taking a picture at the bar with another girl, like you're just adding fuel to the fire. You're making it worse. So I don't think Baker gave himself, he didn't help himself in any way. I don't know that teams are going to be totally turned off from that. But again, I think it's more of it is what it is. We're going to probably be able to move him at some point because there's still a lot of teams in this league that straight up don't have someone that I would qualify as a QB1. Like, Drew Lock there can't play a full season under Drew Lock. It's just not. It's not realistic.
So you're telling me that you're telling me Sam Darnold and Matt Corral doesn't really do it for you?
It doesn't.
With Matt Rule's job on the line.
Yeah,
with Matt Rule's job on the line. This is what you're going to run with.
Something about it just, it doesn't get me going. And I think that even like as with Matt Rule, like it's a perfect scenario where he can throw out one last lifeline to save his job. I don't think it's going to work. I think Rule is out whatever way you cut it. And I think that we see Baker, someone's going to take Baker. At the end of the day, Baker is a absolutely serviceable quarterback. He does get a lot of hate, but there's teams that are in way worse situations than people are leading on to. Part of the Browns roster that really interests me after the draft is that running back room. It is so crowded now, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but still a little crowded even for a team that is as run heavy as the Browns. I mean, you say the Cleveland Browns, what are they known for? People are going to say running ball. That's going to be one of the first things that comes to mind for them. You know, they have their Pro Bowler Chubb, they have Kareem Hunt, and they have that potential, breakout candidate a lot of people are talking about in Ernest Johnson. They went and they got Jerome Ford, if I'm not mistaken. Was that their second pick? What happens with all these guys? It's a lot of guys.
This is interesting because, for Kareem Hunt, it's, if he's here for the entire season, and this is one of the things that really hurt this team last year and wasn't talked about enough. You didn't have Kareem Hunt for 9 games. The offense was sloppy at times. Kareem Hunt's just got kind of a sloppy game. He could have been a guy that really, really helped this offense that was really, really struggling last year. Nobody really wants to mention it. You have to, it has to either be Odell Beckham Jr.'s fault or Baker Mayfield's fault. It's not that, this team could even survive some of this mess if they had Kareem Hunt for 9 games. Kareem, it's final year, 6.5 coming to him. But now this is where do I stand in this room? Obviously, they know Nick is going to be here for the foreseeable future with his contract extension. You did draft Jerome Ford. Ernest Johnson outplayed any expectation anybody had for him in Cleveland when they brought him in years ago under John Dorsey. So that's how long Ernest has been with the Browns organization. There is the possibility of Demetric Felton, who could maybe give you a third back type of role. So you're talking about 5 capable players. And again, with the Browns, there's weird conversations we're having now that we've never had in years past. You were going to have to get rid of players who were certainly good, who were certainly serviceable, who at any point in time, the Cleveland Browns would have loved to have. But this is now an opportunity where it's not going to work that way. Ernest Johnson, at the end of the day, do the Browns and Ernest say, all right, whatever we thought we could have got when we had you on the tag that we applied, do we just find a way to get you somewhere to get you an opportunity? Or does somebody run into a situation? Like, prime example would have been the Baltimore Ravens somewhere last year, late August, Dobbins, Gus Edwards go down in 36 hours of each other. And pretty much kind of season went, it was kind of on the line. Do you get a team that says, oh, wow, well, we can get a potential player from the Cleveland Browns in Kareem Hunt that can give us receiving, rushing combined 1,000, 1,300, 1,400 yards. That capability is there still within Kareem. And then there's Jerome Ford. And a lot of people I talked to, and me personally, when you actually watch Jerome Ford play at Cincinnati, he kind of reminded you of Nick Chubb. He was kind of just like a Hoover. They were open yards. He was fast. He was strong. He was difficult to tackle, had a nose for the end zone, solid player. So I think at the end of the day, I think Demetric Felton is in a tough spot. And I think one of Ernest Johnson or Kareem Hunt is in a tough spot. If you're the Browns and you truly think, you have the possibility to be all in, and even still understanding that your quarterback obviously is going to be vacationing away from this team for a while, don't you want to make your running back room as strong as possible, which means most likely you want to keep Kareem around for this season. So I think at the end of the day, maybe you move on from Ernest. I don't think Demetric Felton makes this team. Do you try to maybe get him back on a practice squad? It's going to be different this year, practice squad wise. The last 2 years with COVID, other teams were kind of friendly, like, all right, just keep your guy, kick him to the practice squad. It's not going to be that way now. If teams want a player, they are not going to basically say, oh, we didn't see the name. They're going to go out and they're going to get him. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Chubb, it's going to be Hunt, and it's going to be the rookie Jerome Ford.
Yeah, and what a luxury to have. Like, I even think about my New York Giants, and that running back room is barely existed. So the Browns are in such a good spot because it's taken a little bit to get there, a couple of years of very intentional, smart moves. But now they're in a spot where it's like, oh, we have to see which of our top guys we're going to get rid of at this point. What? There's not many teams in the entire league that have that luxury to go ahead and say that. I think another area of this entire roster that I don't know if a lot of people are talking about is their defense. And I think in the division that they're in, the way that you win that division is through defense ultimately. And in my opinion, no matter how strong your offense is, I know we've got some studs in Lamar Jackson, we've got the Burrows, and I get that, but they made some great moves. They also, even through the draft, they drafted one of my favorite defensive tackles in Perion Winfrey out of Oklahoma on day 3, an absolute stud that I think fits this roster actually beautifully. He was a 2-year starter. He won the Senior Bowl MVP, but there's not a lot of defensive tackle experience on the team. So he's almost probably going to be more of an immediate starter. There is a massive opportunity there for him, but let's talk about the defense a little bit and what this looks like and how much it's going to, help the Browns as a whole.
See, and this is for me, and again, talking points, because so much was focused on Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, and the offensive issues last year. One thing you didn't talk about, this team held an opponent to 9 times last year, 16 points or less. Unheard of. This is unheard of in the modern day of the NFL. You got Denzel Ward extended. You have Greg Newsome, who turned out to be a gem of a pick. You still have Greedy Williams here, but Greedy Williams will be going to win a contract here. Their 4th cornerback is A.J. Green, a player the Browns love. He does everything that is asked of him, and then some. One reason the Browns love him. They went and got a physical corner with their first selection in 2022 draft in Martin Emerson. Just kind of real pain in the butt, real physical, kind of the guy who, when he tackles you, is going to kind of drag his knee up, your spine, maybe, tap the helmet a tiny bit. Nothing enough to get a penalty, but just enough to let you know, hey, I'm going to be here every single play.
Yeah.
I think with the safety position, and last year, it was weird because they went into the year, they were very, very deep. And then as it progressed really quickly, all of a sudden guys were dropping like flies. Grant Delpit wasn't ready yet coming back from his Achilles. Ronnie Harrison, mentally at times was out. And with John Johnson III, you brought in this unique safety who you said he can do so many things at the position. The Browns were in the opportunity that they can do him. John Johnson is not the most athletic safety in the world. So say you're going to take John Johnson. Oh, we're going to play him on the roof. He'll just play deep safety. That's great. What do we pay $12 million for? You can find anybody to go do that. But as it went on, MJ Stewart was a great player. I would have loved for them to re-sign. Went to Houston for 1 year, $2.5 million, which still absolutely dumbfounds me because I think he was the best safety on the Browns roster last year. But Ronnie Harrison kind of got to that point where free agency went along and you had the John Travolta gif and it never really came for him. Tail between legs. The Browns were like, we'll keep you back. But he's a guy who excels around the line of scrimmage. He's got great length. He's almost essentially built like a modern day linebacker where it's, 6'2", 220 and change, moves well, had a really, really great 2020, had a very, very disappointing 2021. Grant Delpit, as the year picked up, was just, you saw the intelligence, you saw the confidence in the Achilles, you saw the player you thought you were getting when the Browns took him, actually 44, ironically enough, a couple of years ago out of LSU. The linebacking core, Anthony Walker is the intelligence and the brain trust of it. Sione Taki is kind of like the bouncer, the physicality of that room. And Jeremiah Usukoromoa is just a special, special individual. There's no off button. He goes 100 million miles an hour. He's been tearing it up in OTAs this week and last week. And this is with all that is going on with the loss of his brother, the potential homicide. And he's just been able to block this out and go in there and basically take a step up as being one of the building blocks of this defense. Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, just a beautiful matchup. And I think the thing is they're like the freakiest of the freakiest ever. So there's like only conversations that those two can have, and only they would understand. Oh, when you do this, and everybody else in the room would be like, "What? What are you talking about?"
It's like having a superpower and
exactly. You're like, how would you
think about Hitch? Yeah.
Then you get to the defensive tackle room, and it's kind of like, But it's been this way forever in the defensive tackle room. We've been talking about this forever. Last year, they tried to mask it with Malik Jackson. Malik Jackson's always been a guy who had a presence as an interior pass rusher. Brown said, we're going to use you as a full-time defensive tackle. Well, guess what? He got so beat up and so gassed up trying to defend the run because essentially he was undersized. He never became the pass rushing factor they wanted him to. Malik McDowell, it was a really, really nice find. Obviously, Malik McDowell trouble may have found him again, obviously, and now obviously in limbo as far as being any ability to play again in the NFL currently. The one to watch here certainly is Perion Winfrey, and I love the motor, I love the attitude. We've actually mentioned like the second the career is over in the NFL, AEW, WWE, the mic skills are ready. You're just going to have to teach him a couple of moves. He'll be ready to go. And that's no joke. I've actually had conversations with Perion Winfrey.
Oh, wow.
He is this guy all the time. It's not an act. He is certainly that type of guy. The one to watch here, though, is probably Tommy Togiai. He was drafted in the 5th round last year. Everybody knew he was raw coming out of Ohio State. At the time, people were like, wow, you probably should have stuck around. Ohio State would have gotten you there. You would have gotten drafted a lot higher. But he went to a team, where he learned, and there were signs as the year went on. He would be the guy to watch as far as assisting in run defense. But Perion Winfrey, you can do some lovely packages in nickel and dime, where you now have, obviously Garrett. You are bringing back Jadeveon Clowney. Alex Wright is an interesting guy. Isaiah Thomas, Chase Winovich, Perion Winfrey can be all part of that rotation up front. And if it goes like the Browns think it's going to go, you're going to be playing a lot of nickel and dime because you think you're going to be ahead. But even still, you're going to be playing a lot of nickel and dime because that's what you need to do to beat the Ravens. That's certainly what you're going to need to do to play with the Bengals. So I love it. And for me, the former college wide receiver, to spend as much time as I have the last couple of weeks talking about defense, it almost makes me want to hurl. But that's how positive I am of where this unit is. And the fact that nothing's changed. Joe Woods is now in his 3rd year. There's players here that have been with him for that long. It's basically just about what can we do to accentuate this group. There's not a lot of newness. It's just about taking it to yet another level.
And it's really nice because it's there's a lot of versatility on this defense and a lot of raw talent. And I think, again, another one of the luxuries that the Browns do have is you can go ahead and in round 7, round 3, you take Alex Wright, you take an Isaiah Thomas, that maybe, there's probably things that we can teach him. Like it's coachable stuff, and you have time to develop him. He's a speedy guy. There's a lot to like about him. Is he ready to start tomorrow? No, but do you see like a chance where we take a little bit of time with him? Maybe he's on the roster. He's not, participating much. He's not playing in games, but in 1-2 years, is this a guy that suddenly is developed enough and we're like, all right, now we can plug and play him when we need to, and we have depth. So if people do get hurt, you have some depth. They even did that right. Again, I think their last pick of the draft was a center. So you just add a little center security. You've moved on from, what's his name?
JC Tretter.
Right? Yeah. And you're in a good spot there. You added that 2020 5th round pick in Nick Harris. And I like what the Browns have done to construct this offense. It'll be interesting to see how whatever goes on, how that impacts them, how that impacts their year. But let's talk about the rest of the NFC.
Well, just one thing here, actually, because you mentioned Nick Harris.
Sure.
And this is where it's interesting. Nick Harris, obviously, you drafted a center in the 5th round, and he sat essentially for 2 years. And I think this is where a lot of people are misconstrued. Is J.C. Tretter, he's never practiced with the Cleveland Browns. Even going back to 2018, he had a massive ankle injury against the Chargers. They got killed. It was like week 7. He was literally a guy that came out Friday, taped up to the point where he was like immobile, basically stood at the center position so they could give him the views of what was going on. Nick Harris was essentially the starting center or the understudy who never got to take the stage. He, day one as a rookie, J.C. Tretter had his knee drained right before camp. He was the starting center in every practice in 2020. He was the starting center in every practice in 2021. And it was a tough decision to make because J.C. Tretter, number one, a great player, a warrior. A lot of people love him in that locker room. But it was like, we've done everything but actually let this kid play. He played Christmas Day against Green Bay Packers. He had an excellent game. And look, it's always about money. I mean, Nick Harris is not making even close to $1 million. J.C. Tretter was making $7 million. It was like, it hurts. It's a tough move to have to make, but the kid has earned it. It's his time. So it's either move on from him, and then what happens? We don't have an insurance policy if J.C. Tretter does go down again. And it was just Nick Harris's time, and it was a move that not a lot of fans were thrilled with. But when you really got under it, it was like, well, what are you going to do? I mean, you can't keep doing this to the poor kid. He's busting his butt, doing everything, improving everything this team needed. And he basically was just not getting the opportunity to basically do it under the bright lights.
Right. And totally, I absolutely agree with that. I think, and again, but then the Bears did a good thing and they recognized, we need a little bit more security at the position. So, in the 7th round. They went and got a guy that they think, again, like they can take some time and work on and develop. And again, the Browns have done a good job, but it comes down to money. Like, it's a business. And if you haven't heard, Deshaun Watson's making a shitload of money. So there had to be decisions to be had. So I think it was a good move. I also, last thing I'll say about the draft, if you can't tell, I did like the Browns draft a lot, is they got a kicker. They went Bengals style, the way that they went with McPherson. And now, they've resolved this, recent kicking problem, could be for a very, very long time. And a lot of people thought that he was possibly the best kicker in this draft. So I like what they did there. I think that was still a good move, because when you have a roster like this, you can go ahead. And if you want to take a kicker in the 4th round, I don't think it was the end of the world the way that some people made it.
And what it was is, but as I was saying, look, the Browns were not drafting starters, and it kept, even still, like they were moving down, but they were still, it was like, well, there's still a lot of picks. I understand they're acquiring picks for the future, but they still got to draft a lot of guys. And once the Perion Winfrey selection went down, it was like, everybody's like, go for it. We're okay with it. Me, normally, go, if you got to draft a punter or a kicker, you tell me you can't find one. But the Browns had done a lot of research. 3rd-year linebacker Jacob Phillips, now 3rd-year safety Grant Delpit, both from LSU. So it's not like the Browns had an unfamiliarity with LSU, the program down there. Obviously, certainly have some contacts down there. Bringing in Cade York, I mean, I'm fine with it. My theory is still is this: make your extra points and hit 50-yarders, because otherwise, none of it's going to matter. It comes down to it. Obviously, a few clutch kicks a year. He's shown the ability to do that. You keep in mind, he was a huge part of a national championship season with LSU. So it's not like he's unfamiliar to, money kicks, pressure situations. It was a move they absolutely had to make. And it was the point of, are we going to use draft picks for players that we're going to end up cutting? In an analytical regime, that doesn't work. You don't want to say we used the draft asset. Oh, well, he was good, but not good enough. But basically, we just punted. Even on a day 3 pick, we basically punted on it. Smart people are never going to view that. They're going to view it as it may be a minor investment, but it could come back with major returns.
Absolutely. And again, and that's how you end up saving some money too at the end of the day, especially when you need to do that. And we'll close with talking about the AFC North. The Browns have come in 3rd the past 4 years. I think they're 2 years out from having a wild card spot there. Talk to me about the AFC North and who is on top of this. What do the Browns need to make their way? The AFC is tough. This is also, the AFC North is a tough division. So just talk to me as a whole.
For me, first thing is the Ravens. The question is where is the future of the Ravens? Because it's really strange that we're talking about Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield essentially are in the same contractual situation at the point in their career. One is a former NFL MVP. One is one where the Browns basically said, we thought you were good. We didn't think you were good enough. And the fact that, Hollywood Brown basically said, all right, well, go ahead and trade me. The Ravens situation is weird. And, are the Ravens in a spot where, they understand playing Lamar that the way they do, it's going to come up and it's going to cost you a season at some point. Obviously, there's a good probability of a serious injury when you're having your quarterback run the football as much as they do. So where does that future go? And if you're Lamar, I mean, I can understand. And it seems like he's quietly aggravated, not making a scene so much, but also saying, I am an NFL MVP. Where is my deal? And, the Ravens even said, oh, well, he can sign it whenever he's ready. We're ready. That don't sound like it, because any guy who's ready to sign for $200 million, you can call me anytime. I'm going to call you'll get my John Hancock on that. The Steelers with Kenny Pickett, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think there has to be a step down. And it's not that Ben was playing out of his mind these last couple of years. I think we all think he was hanging on by a thread. But it's just that when you have something as long as they did, even though you're bringing in Kenny Pickett, who's a little bit older, and you're trying to avoid any of these, young bumps that he may find, it was a 17-year run. It's a significant amount of time. How are the wide receivers going to work out? I mean, these guys have always played with Ben. You have a guy like Chase Claypool, all the potential in the world, but there's times where, it's just like, could you just focus just a little bit. It's great that you
Yeah.
caught the ball for 21 yards, but you just cost us 13 seconds as we're trying to get a game-tying field goal. The defense, obviously TJ Watt's fantastic. And of course, Casey Hayward, fantastic. But there's times over the last couple of years where you've seen some lapses. Even a player like Minkah Fitzpatrick, as great as everybody thought he was, there's been lapses. The Bengals, and this is one where, and we did this today, and the Bengals, yes, they did play in the Super Bowl. The Browns did not. But what people want to say about the Cincinnati Bengals right now, isn't this everything that everybody was saying about the Cleveland Browns last year? Like, it's all there. It's going to totally happen.
Yeah.
And look, not saying Joe Burrow is Baker Mayfield. Joe Burrow is a better player. Not saying that Joe Burrow may be potentially injured. But that playoff run, I mean, there's a little false bravado to that. The Tennessee Titans lost that game because they insisted on trying to get Derrick Henry back into the equation. If they had just said, you know what, we might be able to pull this off, let Derrick involved a tiny bit, and we'll come back next week, see where he's at. The Kansas City Chiefs, obviously, we all saw left points on the board, tried to get too cute with it. The Bengals, obviously, to their credit, executed when need be and came out with that. Yes, there were changes made on the offensive line. Lael Collins was the one that really maybe kind of moved the needle a little bit. But this quarterback has gotten sacked a ton. He has gotten sacked a ton. And if he is that, and the other thing is they have still, Joe Burrow has still never beaten the Cleveland Browns. And it's weird, everybody for what they want to say, he's 0-3. And last year, it wasn't close. It really was not close when he played them last year. So it's going to be an interesting division. You tell me if the Browns, I mean, I don't, obviously at this point, I've wavered some. I do not think you're getting Deshaun Watson for 17 games. I thought there was going to be a point where maybe this would be put off to 2023, just due to the fact that if the civil litigation is not going to start till the end of the season, the NFL would be in this tough position of, if the suspension right now is for personal conduct, how do we give it now? But what happens if the litigation that comes out early next in 2023 is maybe even worse? What do you do then? You're in a spot of like, well, do we penalize them twice? I do think it's going to probably come for 2022. The question would be games. If it's 4 and it's Jacoby Brissett, I think the Browns could still easily go 4-0 and then bring in their new toy after it. It's going to come down to what you do, obviously, against the Steelers, against the Ravens, against the Bengals. I think the Browns are poised for it. And as you wanted to, as you brought up, and as I tried to mention myself, I think it's because of the Browns defense. I really, really do. And they are equipped where if a guy is out for a week or two at almost every single position on the defense, it's not an issue. They're legit 5 deep at corner. They're 4 deep at safety. They're like 5 deep at linebacker. It depends on the 2 rookie edge rushers. God forbid if something happened to either Miles or Jadeveon. But this defense is ready to go. And if it was 9 games last year, 16 points or less, and now everybody's evolving, and it's not like there's any old men in this defense where you're worried about somebody's about to fall off.
Right.
I think the Browns could win the AFC North, and I think one of the biggest reasons why is going to be their defense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's, because in the NFC, you could still sneak in and get that wild card a little bit easier, obviously, than in the AFC. It's more important to lock down that division spot because it takes a hell of a lot more wins in the AFC to get that wild card spot than it does in the NFC. I'll ask you one more question, then I'll spin the wheel to see who won the jersey. Why don't you give me the player that you're most excited for next season on this team?
I think I am the most excited. I think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is going to be the leading tackler for the Cleveland Browns. And I think he's going to it's going to be one of those things. And the Browns don't do captains, but I think it's going to be something where you're going to see that, and Miles kind of really isn't that style of guy, but I think you're going to see that maybe Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is going to basically be, the force, the engine that, is, and I don't want to use the Ray Lewis comparison, but he's going to be like that type where everybody kind of rallies around Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah because he just plays with a passion. He plays with this fired up intense. And I think there were times last year where he overran plays due to rookie exuberance, due to excitement. And I think those things are going to get cleaned up. And he will be one of the bigger talking about points about this Cleveland Browns defense.
It's going to be fun to watch this defense next year. I'm very, very, very excited. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you? Then I will spin this wheel now that I've said it like 7 times. But tell everyone where they can find you, what you're working on, and what's coming up, because you do some great stuff over there.
Obviously with Locked On Browns, we've been there 6 years. Well, I mean, this will be our sixth season. It's been, some changes here. Obviously, we've brought in another host here for the first time ever. Garrett Bush, he's part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, has joined me. We're just continuing the growth here. YouTube, everything. It's just been a heck of a ride here. And we've really had some great moments of 2018, great times. 2020, great times. 2019, not so much. 2021, not so much. And if you just want to look at the football side of the Cleveland Browns, there's a lot to be excited for this season. Mm-hmm. And I know there's still some, fans and, who are hurt and disappointed. And I truly understand. And there's certainly a huge part of any fan base that's like, look, this is my getaway from everyday life for 3 hours, 3.5 hours on a Sunday. I'll deal with it because this is what I enjoy doing. But we've had a lot of fun with it. Locked On Browns available on YouTube, whatever podcast platform where you get your podcasts, certainly available there. Can follow over at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. It's been a hell of a ride through 5.5 years here. I think there's a lot of potential here to be the most successful season in the run that we've had. And just looking at looking forward to everything that comes along with it. Now spin that wheel. Come on, Miss Steph. Get that jersey away.
You were fantastic. This was awesome. I'm so happy that you came on. I'll spin this. Let's see if I do it right. I may not. I'm not great at this. Okay, I did do it. So it's spinning. Let's see if I'm going to be able to see from here. We got, so LUCQ has won. I will reach out to you. You had to join our Discord, so I'll find you in there and send that over. I'm glad that we were able to get that to someone, send it over to someone that will love it. Thanks again. I'm going to be, I'm not sure which team we're going to next. It'll probably be a surprise. I think it's going to be Steelers. It will be next week. I've been chatting everyone's ear off all week with a million shows. So I'm going to give myself a little break. I have a wedding this weekend. But again, I appreciate you so much. And
of course, Steph.
Bye, guys.